I'm thinking right now is, why are there any fat Eskimos? Can you tell me? I don't know. Anyway, about a month ago, my husband and daughter, where are they? So about a month ago, we're on the phone with Richard, and he's so intimidating there in the corner, I feel like I need to be saying Mr. Worman. Anyway, we're on the phone with him, and we're saying, what are we going to talk about? And he said, well, you guys are a family who's involved in health. Why don't you talk about families and health? Is he misbehaving back there?
We can see you now.
Hi. So it sounded good, because there is definitely a connection. We're, as you know, and I've seen in the maps, we're a nation facing a crisis of epidemic proportion. We are chronically obese. We suffer from chronic disease, most of it preventable, almost all of it determined by our lifestyle choices, which both John and Ray spoke about. The interesting thing is that all of those lifestyle choices are based in what we do at home and what we're taught in our families and the choices we make every single day within those families. So we thought about it for a second, and we thought, yeah, that's a great idea. We're a family. We can talk about health and families. And we had this vision of traipsing up here like the Von Trapps, and here I am alone. So through the magic of technology, my family is being digitally beamed into you today. So I'm going to turn over the stage to them and let them talk about, because they're the real experts on health. I'm just the family part. So I'm going to let them talk.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm here with Daphne in the studio. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you, but our shoot schedules got messed up and Daphne got pulled into one of these programs. So I'm going to deliver the exact same material that I would have if I could have spent the day with you in San Diego. As Lisa's going to come back and discuss in a few moments, we had the honor of being at the governor's conference yesterday, and it was interesting as we did this presentation about relationships. It reminded me how important these relationships were, and your family is, to your long-term well-being. And I can regale you with the numbers, but it's self-evident. It's material your mother would have shared with you as well. That what drives well-being long-term is not just the physical things you do, the activities you're involved in, but also the relationships you cultivate and create. And so much of that culturally is driven by your family. That when Saul invited us to participate, we thought, why don't we go back to the basics of how we as a family try to talk about health? How do we make it part of what we do? How do we make it part of the meals we have, the activities we embark on, the way we think about our relationships? And like most families, there's a soap opera involved in every one of the events we do together, and all kinds of saga and crying and yelling and screaming, and periodically happy children. Oftentimes not, especially when they're teenagers. But we certainly learned a fair amount about this theme. So I thought I'd come back and talk to you a little bit about which of these are the most important for me, and then Daphne's going to take it away and talk a little bit about how we can turn our kids from being an Achilles heel for many of the things we're talking about in the society, at least from the perspective of health and well-being, to actually a strength point. They can become the armor. They can become the future. They always will be. They always have been, and they can do it again. So Lisa and I have been married for 25 years this summer, and we started with that big launch point throughout this year to talk about relationships whenever I'm asked about it. So I'll start there again. And there are many things that I've had the honor of participating in my life, but the number one event is my marriage with Lisa. It's the best decision I ever made. It has driven a lot of health and wellness in my personal existence. She certainly has opened my eyes to alternative medicine. And it's often the mothers of the families who are the army for well-being. And on the show, when we talk about topics, we are directly aimed at women because we know that they're already paying attention. It's on their radar screen. And I emphasize that for the many of you in the audience who are thinking about how to best message information, to recognize that they will be the army. Men, unfortunately, are busy building memorials to their own grandeur, statues to the heights they've been able to achieve. And when those statues come crumbling down, which they do in our lives periodically, and bring a humbleness to us, it's often from illness, but you can't count on that awakening call in time. So Lisa and I have spent a frequent amount of time talking about what marriage is all about and how that relationship is passed on to our children. And fundamentally, marriage is not about happiness, we don't think. It's about growth. If you're growing in the relationship, and this goes beyond marriage to partners, to friends, colleagues, associates, if you're growing in the relationships that you have, then you're headed in the right direction. And when we look at data around marriages and longevity, it's really not that clear to define a benefit. If you're in a happy marriage, there's absolutely a value to your health of being involved in the relationship. But unhappy marriages offer the opposite impact, actually shorten the duration of happiness and longevity. So you want to have a relationship that you're happy in and then take it to a better place. And we spent a fair amount of time talking to each other, all of us, about how we push each other's buttons. And although that's a sore point in most families, and many of you have similar experiences, it's actually, I think, a very healthy thing to have people who can press your buttons in life. It awakens you to the reality of the lies you tell yourself. It wakes you up to the misbeliefs you may have about your own health and well-being. And certainly Lisa's unique ability to press my buttons, which has caused lots of strife among our parents of Daphne, is something that I count as one of the great blessings of my life, because I know that I'll always get honesty from her. So what are the three things that I think are most important in the relationships that we build and then lead to the health benefits down the road? The first is you have to have relationships based on love, and love is not just an amorous feeling towards each other, but it's a profound, fundamental recognition that humans do not die of the dark; they die of the cold. Metaphorically, it's not lack of knowledge that hurts our relationships. It's lack of an emotional bond that could otherwise keep us together that often causes that more than anything else. The second thing is honesty. You protect each other through the tough love that you offer. And my cultural background as a surgeon often led to me feeling passionately about a belief that people need to be able to give each other bad news and still be respected. That's what doctors do, ideally. Interestingly, when I tape the show, I can never quite tell what people are telling me if it's really honest or not, because in the entertainment world, they don't tell you. One day you're dead. And that's the first time you find out you weren't doing well. And so I think for a lot of people, an appreciation of the value of giving that difficult to offer advice. And if you're questioning that insight, you ask yourself, when was the last time you knew someone who had bad breath and you told them? And we don't do it, and it's not accepted socially, but it's something you wish someone would have told you before you lose that many more friends. And the last is the understandably desirous need to have support when you're weak, especially when you're physically weak. And I see in families, when we try to message information that could be life-changing, life-saving, especially when people aren't feeling well, try to go after the support system. Try to figure out where the opportunities are to help people who already love you to support you. And a good example is cigarette smoking. Instead of telling people who are cigarette smokers that they're fools and jerks and misled by their cigarette addiction, they know that already. And they're not going to stop smoking because you told them that. What they might respond to is a very heartfelt and passionate plea for them to recognize that you care for them, you love them. And all you want them to do is to love themselves as much as you care for them. And that changes the dynamic dramatically. And so instead of being downtrodden and feeling that they've lost all the remaining self-esteem that is already low, that's why they smoke, they get more nervous, and they go smoke some more. So flip that on its head by working from emotion. Now, this is, for me, a very important insight, and Lisa has shared this with me throughout my life. Oprah has made this point to me. I think it's something that women get and guys don't. But people do not change how they feel and do not change how they act based on what they know. They change how they are motivated and act based on how they feel about what they've heard. And for that reason, on the show, we spent a lot of time trying to hook in emotionally. And I fear sometimes, Saul, and for the rest of the folks that are listening, that we spend too much time talking about the facts of the problems in health in America and not enough time making it easy to do the right thing and connecting emotionally to what's going on. And before I hand this to Lisa to talk a little bit about, Daphne, talk a little bit about her life, I'm going to emphasize two fundamental realities. I had a patient come in the office the other day and continue to remind me that he needed to hear the information explained clearly. And his wife said, "Sir, you have to speak up louder. He can't hear you very well." So I started speaking more loudly, and she said, "You have to talk even louder. He can't hear well." So I was really raising my voice. People outside the exam room could hear us, so the discourse. So finally, his wife had to step out of the room to go to the restroom, and the patient leaned over and said, "Doc, I hear just fine." And he could. And the selective hearing that we often bring into our lives is something that unfortunately goes the wrong way in long-term relationships. And I think one of the goals in any discussion about health is to be able to truly hear what people are telling you. And when Daphne was a little girl, she used to always, when I was videotaping her, say, "Daddy, look at my eyes. Look at my eyes. Can you see my eyes?" And I say, "Honey, I'm looking right at your eyes. I'm right here. I'm here with you." She goes, "No, Daddy, look at my eyes." And only later, when I look at the videotapes, this is, of course, when she was 3 or 4 years of age, that I realized that I had the camera up. And I was filming her beautifully, and I could see her, but she couldn't see my eyes. What Daphne was asking for was not that I could watch her eyes, but she wanted to see my eyes. And sometimes the people who are dearest to you say things that are honest and they're heartfelt and they make sense, but you don't get it. And I think that's where families come in, to hear it from numerous different sides and to be able to connect back along those lines. So Daphne, your thoughts?
Great. Well, I'm going to expand a little bit about that and about the role that I think we as families can play in facilitating a young generation that really cares about our health and sort of trying to bridge the gap between what maybe our parents have done wrong and what we can do better and how we can preserve our health in the long term. I'm going to go ahead and talk about three things. The first of which is for you as parents, for you as concerned citizens, for you as people who see that, as we've talked about, we're getting into very dangerous territory in American health overall. And if we want to make a consistent and serious change, it's going to need to come from the bottom up, and that means where the dollars are getting spent. So as parents, people who are, possibly responsible for what the family is eating every day, you need to lead by example. That means not falling for those cliche things that say it's fruit juice included, or that you think fruit roll-ups are healthy for your kids and that's just a little sweet tooth for them. These things are purposeful marketing trips, and they're tripping me up, that allow you as parents to feel like you're giving your kid a little indulgence, but you might as well be giving them a candy bar. So don't trick yourself into thinking you're giving them any, doing them any favors, and don't set your kids up for that same failure of judgment where they think they're doing the right thing and in reality they're just getting more sugar, more artificial flavoring, and more artificial coloring. But caution that with allowing them to make their own mistakes. My dad just talked about how important it is to have the emotional tie, and I can tell you, as someone who grew up overweight in a very medical-based family, that it can be very, it is not always about the information you have on hand. It's not always about having the right resources there and the experts who, though they might want to push you in the right direction, do not have the catalyst it takes to get you to recognize this is something that's important to me, this is something I'm going to commit my life to because health is that important. And it wasn't until I had that sort of cathartic and epiphany moment in my own life that I was able to lose the weight and get my health back on track. The second thing I want to talk about is facilitating a healthier lifestyle, healthier food system for everyone in this country. And that's something we've talked about a little bit already this morning, with the wonderful initiatives Whole Foods has in place. And I think it needs to be even on a broader scale than that. We need to have healthy, accessible, affordable food widely available so that the choice to be healthy, and this is something my dad talks about frequently, is easy. I mean, how it's so difficult now to find that food on the run or to pay that extra $10 or however much it is to actually get access to healthy food. And that can't be the case if we really want this to be a widespread change. Because my expertise is in the college realm, I talk about the fact that colleges spend $4 billion annually on their food. Why not use that hotbed of education with all these committed, passionate individuals to start to catalyze a real change across this nation? You can do it in your corporations, you can do it in your kids' schools, you can do it even as just a concerned citizen. And I think that's a place where we can all stand to make a difference if we start voting 3 times a day with our wallets for food that really does sustain our health. The third thing, and finally, is hold each other accountable. I can't help but come to the realization that more and more it feels as though we've come to a point where being obese, being very overweight to the point where it predicts us for diabetes and heart disease and a number of preventable diseases is socially acceptable. It's okay that you struggle with your weight. It's okay that, that programs out there that try to get you to lose weight play on the aesthetic qualities of being overweight and not on the health detriments of that quality. And I think that, being in a family, being part of a community, being part of a support group who will support you in this desire to really get your health back on track is crucial. And you need to be the one who pushes and nudges everyone around you. Don't think it's okay because you need to get your health back on track. I want my generation to have the healthcare reform as our legacy. I want us to be involved and be this army of advocates to get our country back on track. And I want you to help me with that, if you will, in each of your own families and in the larger community that you belong to.
So let me, if I could, come back to this broader theme of parenting. I wrote an article that's in this week's Time magazine, in part because I was preparing for this discussion today. And Lisa and I talked about how to best describe how we envision parenting. And I think the best metaphor is that you're going down this big stream of life in a canoe. The canoe, metaphorically, are your genes. And you're steering that canoe, and your child is in the canoe with you because they share your genes. But as you're going down that river, you can get close to the embankment, you can learn how to navigate the rapids, you can hit some rocks. There are lots of things that can happen because the environment challenges you, jumps out at you. Your goal as a parent, I think, is to use that canoe wisely as you can, but more importantly is to teach your child how to use the paddle. Because at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to be able to use that. So a couple little tidbits that we used in our family that may be valuable for your families. And Lisa, I'd love, and when we come back to you, if you could offer some additional thoughts and get some insights from the audience. Issue number 1, kids, because their brains are like sponges, they need a mess around them. So make a mess. Spill stuff, spill music, spill sports, spill all kinds of things around them so they get to absorb them and take it to heart. Number 2, and I've emphasized to Daphne and all of our 4 children, I think our kids have to play more. Now, I'm not saying play in lieu of studying. I'm just saying play, period. Because play teaches conflict resolution. Play teaches you how to fail and get back up again, probably more important than anything else you'll learn. And you don't learn a lot of these life skills in algebra class. And although I want you to learn sciences and math and the other things that we feel are important to be able to have a day job, the inability of so many folks who come into my laboratory at Columbia University and try to function as clinical cardiac surgeons, and the limitations they feel are often because they never had the time to play and they never were allowed the freedom to make those mistakes. And the helicopter parenting that is so common actually holds back the next generation from taking that mantle of responsibility. In our family, we had a couple adages. Number one, if you have to show up. And showing up doesn't mean you literally physically. You got to mentally show up for what's going on. So if it's nice out, you're out. Making the kids prove themselves by going out and exposing themselves and taking a couple chances. Number 2, we do this thing called Oz Olympics, which Daphne, she's signed now. But when there were times we were together, I wanted the kids competing with each other because I wanted to see how they do. I wanted to make sure that we could find events that they could all compete in fairly, and then watch them resolve issues as they came up. Watch how they dealt under the pressure of that. And it wasn't to make them feel insecure; it was to do the opposite. It was to let them fail when I could see them, so that we could help them, and Lisa and I would support them. And the last thing that Lisa's been so good about, and whenever I can, I try as well, is we tell them bedtime stories. Now, Daphne won't put her head on my chest. Let me tell her bedtime stories anymore. But when they were young, and for the younger ones, 2 of our children are still younger, we still do that. And the nice thing about bedtime stories is the kids are tired, their defenses are let down. They actually will give you more of an opportunity to talk to them about what's important in your vision. So the parables you may talk about, your own personal stories, what's going on in your life, it's an opportunity for you to have a conversation. And it maintains an intimacy. And the intimacy, I do think, has to be both physical and emotional, that you need to be close with the people that care for you, and you have to be able to reinforce that. Whatever your culture adopts is fine, but it has to happen. And that is begun from the moment you pick up the fork to have dinner together and talk about things besides how school went, that go into the issues of the sacredness of the family unit and the food that you're eating and how it reinforces it, the physical activities you engage in, which again underlines it, right through the rest of the events that you try to share with each other. And all that builds into this broad theme of holistic health that we've been trying to talk about at this conference, and many of us in our own day lives as well, because ultimately it's what's going to drive change in America. We have the opportunity to do this. We have the obligation to do it. We have the mantle responsibility to do this. And I think that this generation of health leaders are going to be able to change this. And I'll give you 2 examples before I hand the responsibility to Lisa real quick. I had the honor of visiting with the folks at Google on Monday. I know Dr. Siegel is there in the audience. And Ronnie quoted, and I don't know if he's going to say this when he discusses some of the things they're doing, but I learned that Google by itself offers more advice, answers more questions every day than all the doctors in the world put together. So if the primary caretakers of the world are living on the web, then we have to come there and meet our patients there, because a quarter of the families in America have less than $500 in the bank. So they're not coming to TEDMED, but they're the ones who desperately need our help. And the primary care for them is not a doctor in a local town, because Marcus Welby is dead. We're going to show up where they live, where they are. And also, I know Dean Ornish is coming up next, is going to talk a tiny bit about this, but Oprah and I and Jeff Arnold have started a web endeavor to answer as many questions as we can out there, sharing the care with a lot of healers. And we've taken the Cleveland Clinic website, the Hopkins website, the New York Presbyterian, where I am website, with a lot of big national organizations like AARP, American Cancer Society, and lump them together to try to answer questions. And if we can make a repository where people have trusted information and it can build on a social network of healers offering advice, it gives that much more of a foundation, of a safety net for the many Americans who are absolutely lost at sea in their own health.
Thanks, darling and darling. In summary, I just want to close because we're running out of time here. I just want to reiterate what Mehmet said, and that is, when we think of families and we think of health, we often think of lifestyle choices, but there is that other element of health that we get in our families, and that's relationships. And I think when we talk about medicine, and if we focus on the latest drug or the newest gene therapy or digital patient records, and we lose the human element, we actually hurt ourselves. And I just want us all to remember the healing in a mother's kiss or a homemade bowl of chicken soup, and to realize that the most powerful healing tool we have is the human connection. Because what Mehmet always likes to say is you need to give your heart a reason to keep beating. Thank you.
All right, before you go, hey, don't go yet. Can you put them back? Are they still there? Do we still have them?
Are you there?
Guys, I have a question for you all. All right, I have a question for you. We talked about this a little bit on the phone, but you know, America looks to you, Dr. Oz, and your family as kind of a guide to decision-making on different issues. Last year, it was the H1N1 and the flu vaccine. Can you guys tell us a little bit about how you make some of those decisions? Because I know you don't always all agree, or how do you guys as a family cope, and how would America, therefore, learn from your example?
Nothing like being provocative, eh, Mark?
Yes, well, it's a big issue.
Well, let me give a high-level perspective, and then Lisa and I can battle it out. Thank goodness we're not in the same room, because usually I get corporal punishment when I bring this up. So I feel very strongly that the flu vaccine makes sense. I think that for many defensible reasons, I trust the system. These vaccines have been used for more than a decade with remarkably low complication rates. Can I guarantee you'll never have an issue with them? Of course not. You give anything to a lot of people, you'll have some issues. But we actually have data now that you save lives not just by avoiding the flu, but by avoiding heart attacks and other complications when you get the flu. And so I strongly feel you ought to get the flu. I've gotten mine on the air for a couple of years now for that reason, just to prove that I'm willing to put myself out there. And certainly if you're exposed to a lot of people as I am, I think it's an obligation and a responsibility to get the vaccine. Now, Lisa, why don't you articulate your perspective on why you don't let me vaccinate the kids or you?
I agree that the flu vaccine makes a lot of sense for the pharmaceutical companies. I don't think it's necessary. I think there are some groups of people that perhaps could justify taking it. I think the widespread panic and fear that was attempted to be spread through this country last year over swine flu was entirely unwarranted, and built a lot of, and actually did a disservice, I think, to our medical establishment, because it built a lot of distrust, because it wasn't the plague that we were led to believe it was going to be, and people saw that, and that's what I think is dangerous. I think that nothing should be that marketed like that, because it does undermine the times when it is necessary, and that's my take on it.
And I think what's interesting here is not even so much the decisions on this specific topic, but if your family is having trouble making decisions on this, obviously much of America is having trouble making decisions on this, and issues even as seemingly simple as the flu vaccine need to be explained in clear, more understandable ways, and maybe there's different ways that the industry can do that and improve that so that we can understand and make better decisions.
I agree, but there needs to be a dialogue. Right. It can't just be, you're the stupid consumer, take what we give you. I think that we underestimate the intelligence of the consumer, the intelligence of the American people, who need to be a player in their own healthcare. They can't just be passive takers of shots and pills, and that's what we've become. We're like little sheeps to the medical industry.
Well, it was helpful.
Mark, if I could offer one bit of follow-up on this, just to temper my wife's enthusiasm on the topic. You know, one of the issues that comes up a lot is that physicians spend a lot of time trying to explain their positions. And take pediatricians, for example, with an inordinate amount of time is spent talking to moms about vaccinations, understandably, because moms have heard a lot of different things. So, you know, we wrote, Mike Roizen and I write all these books called the U books. So one of the books, we spent a lot of time talking about vaccinations. And the American Association of Pediatrics gave me a little bit of a hard time because they argued that we were too much willing to yield on some of the arguments made against vaccinations. And we had a long and very fruitful discussion about it, and we finally agreed to one fundamental reality. If you don't address these issues right to people's faces, they just take the argument underground. The argument doesn't go away. So I would lobby to put in every pediatrician's office, for example, a big poster saying, here are the 10 reasons why vaccines have been criticized. Just put it out there. Mention exactly what people who are against vaccines think is happening, and then go ahead and take your time, calmly, politely, explaining why there's good reasons to believe that may not be the case. At least you got an argument going on, a discussion. If you poo-poo it, then my wife and people like my wife argue that you're treating me like chattel, and just because of that, I'm not going to go along with it. And believe me, you know, in my house, the prosecution never rests. You know, I've learned the hard way.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate having you.
Bye, guys.
Take care. Bye, Daphne.
That was very good.
Thank you.